In this episode of the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast, I'm going to talk about your future yet again. And yes, that's right. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting. And today we're going to talk about something that usually is a snoozer, and that would be the topic of numbers. And those of you who know me, you know that I like numbers. I can geek out on numbers, and there's some very solid reasons for that. But maybe instead, if I jazzed it up a little bit and said we're going to talk about the numbers, then maybe that'll keep it more interesting. But really, I think when we can keep it interesting because we apply the numbers to your future, and we can apply it to reality. We can, and maybe if you understand why I sometimes geek out on the numbers, then maybe you'll have more interest in it as well. And I'm going to share with you something that I share with a lot of my clients, and actually one of the exercises that I do literally for every client, whether they're brand new or whether they are, we're reevaluating things. Some of my clients have been with me for 3, 4, 5, 10 years because we constantly reevaluate and look at what's next. What can we do? And in doing that, one of the things that we go over and we talk about is how we can level up again, how we can grow. And one of the things that, even if it's a long-term client, sometimes if I were, for example, to come back to you and say, let's grow your business, let's grow your practice by another 277,000. And most times when I say something like that, clients are typically, and especially the teams, we can kind of look at it like, oh, that sounds painful, sounds like a lot of work. And interestingly enough, when we start breaking it down, and even if I said, okay, let's back it off a little bit. What if we just grew the practice by 92,000? And for some, that still sounds a little, just sounds like more work. And if I said, well, how about if we just grew the practice by $500 a day? And that, for some reason, that sounds like an easier pill to swallow. So let's talk about this for a minute. So if we said we're going to grow the practice by $500 a day, and the average practice that I work with works about 185 days per year. Now, some I've had as little as 150 days a year, and some it's actually getting closer to 250 days a year. So everything, you have to base it off of how many actual work days we have. But if we set a goal of $500 a day, and we base that off of 185 work days, your practice would grow $92,500. So when you really think about where this is in relation to the scope of your practice, this literally might be a couple extra weeks of production. And here's the awesome part of all of this. If we just grew the practice by $500 a day, and knowing that, and again, here's where we get a little geeky, every practice has a break-even point. That break-even point is the point at which you've covered all of your fixed costs. So fixed costs like your rent, your utilities, and some other things like that. And really after that, you only have your variable costs. And for the most part, every practice out there can grow and not actually have to add staff time or add more hours or add additional staff members. Most people can grow without doing that. That being said, so if all we have to do is cover the variable expenses are typically going to be your cost of supplies, administrative and clinical supplies. It's going to be also a few other little sundry things. And most times, it's no more than 20% of the cost of whatever you did. So if we increase the production of the practice by 92,000, and let's just say for grins and giggles, you collect what you produce, and I know for some that's not the case, but we're going to run with this example for right now. If we brought in an additional $92,500, that means you keep $73,600. Now, we have that money, and we can use it at our disposal to bonus our team, to pay off equipment or buy equipment. We can pay off some other kind of loan. We can maybe bonus the people who own the practice. And, let's face it, there's a reason why we went into business, and we're here to, we went into business to reap the reward of providing a service to the community. So, in doing $500 a day, which again, most teams feel like no big deal, we can do that. And when you then say, well, what if it was $1,500 a day? Same exact example, same exact math. It's just $1,500 a day times 185 work days. That's $277,500 additional that we bring to the practice. And again, if we were to apply that same 20% overhead of variable costs that are required to provide that service, then that means as a practice, we're keeping an additional $222,000. I don't know about you, it sounds pretty sexy to me. And that's where numbers can get kind of sexy. So again, and every client who knows me, everybody who's ever worked with me, I'm an instigator. I like to needle, and that's really how we get results. And with that, so I'm going to run with the $1,500 a day example for a moment. And we talk about then how does that happen? Well, interestingly enough, for a lot of practices, and obviously there's many different people, many different types of practices listening to this right now. You may have 25 patients a day. You may have 100 patients a day, depending on the practice and the volume, the number of practitioners you have working there. But let's just run with 25 patients a day. At that 25 patients per day, on average, we're only talking about finding a way for us to provide additional service or increase the charges at about $60 per person. Really, at that point, it doesn't sound like a whole lot. And I can tell you, there are many practices that actually miss out on things that they should be charging, but also there's literally not one practice I've ever walked into that doesn't have an opportunity to provide other or additional services to their patients. So when you break it down like that, there's tremendous opportunity. And let's spread this out a different way. Some practices have one producer. So for example, like an oral surgery practice, we're talking potentially one patient per day. That's it. Just finding a way to get another patient in our schedule. And part of that might be just finding the patient to bring to our practice. But the other might just be being more efficient with our schedule to where we could actually bring that other patient in. What if it's a practice that has multiple producers? What if it is let's just say it's a group oral surgery practice or a solo dental practice? So let's just go with the solo dental practice for a minute. And we have one dentist and two hygienists. Now we're spreading out that $1,500 a day over 3 people. Not one, but 3 people. So where we find it, we have multiple opportunities within those with those 3 people to find a way for us to increase our production collection by $1,500 a day. It seems a whole lot easier. So really, at that point, what we start doing is we start finding, well, where are the solutions? We can find problems all day long, but where are the solutions for us to increase it, given the producers that we have, given the schedule we have, given the team we have? How do we increase that production by $1,500 a day? So we find the solutions, and then we start implementing that through the team that we have, which the team is the greatest asset that we have, hands down. And I'm going to talk about that in my next podcast. But the real reason of this whole podcast today was about numbers and really using this as a way to somewhat forecast your future. This is why I love the numbers, because this is a way not really so much to be a historian. And that's why I really never, even though I got my degree in accounting, this is why I don't like working in accounting, because I like more about dealing with the future and what we can do as opposed to being a historian. This is something where we can use this as a predictor and really identify where our opportunities lie. And then we identify our strategies and solution and implement them through our greatest asset, which is our team. So with that said, I hopefully this put a little fire in your belly today, got the juices flowing, got you thinking about your future, and maybe get you to start thinking about some numbers. As I said, in the next podcast, I'm going to talk about your greatest asset, which is your team. And as always, if you have interest in certain topics or in certain questions that you'd love for me to answer, please feel free to drop it in the comments below or send me a direct message. I'd love to hear from you.